Let's talk about the series that I'm probably not going to continue reading. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is another series video. So I did one a little while ago talking about the series that I'm in the middle of, and today will be the ones that I'm not for nowing or just outright DNFing. Before we get into it, make sure you check the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord, should you want to come along for the ride. Now, I am in the middle of quite a lot of series, and if I added everything that I've got not for now and DNFing, there is significantly more. But I will say I'm not a DNFer personally. I think I've DNF'd 2 books over the last 3 years. One of those was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, which I promise I will go back to. I wasn't ready for the series at the time I read it. And something by Chuck Wendig, Book of Accidents, House of Accidents. I just couldn't. I got to the halfway mark and just couldn't do it. So I'm not a DNFer. I might DNF a series, which is going to be evident in this video, but I will normally finish whatever book I'm reading in that series. So on this list today, we've got a few that I don't know if I'm going to return to. I don't know if I want to. I'm definitely not being called to it right now or in the foreseeable future, and ones that I am just saying goodbye to. The video will be split into 2, so if you're only interested in the not for nows, then you'll be able to check out the timestamps down below, or if you just want to know about the DNFs, same thing. So let's start with the not for now. So on the not for now list, we have a set of 8 series, which I'm not sure if I'm going to go back to, and maybe some of the reasoning behind that. The first one I have here is the First Law World or Universe by Joe Abercrombie. I read the First Law trilogy. I thought it was fine. For me personally, I think Joe Abercrombie absolutely excels in character work and prose. Those 2 things were fantastic. But as a world building and a plot driven reader, I didn't find enough in there for me to want to continue. I thought that I would give the standalones a go, so I actually owned the first 6 books in this universe. I've got the first trilogy and the 3 standalones. I don't know if I'm going to go back into the standalones. I read Best Served Cold, and I think an adaptation of that would be great, but the story was so painfully predictable and repetitive that I just couldn't get into it, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on with the 2 other standalones or move on to the next series. I'm still somewhat interested in reading Abercrombie's YA, or what people claim is the YA, because it's more nautical and I enjoy that. But yeah, I'm not sure if First Law is ever going to be for me. The next one I have here is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Now, I've only read the first 2. I can't remember what the first one is called. The second one is called Full Moon, I think. I can't remember what the first one is called. I do not like Dresden as a character. He is a misogynistic dingbat. And I know or I've heard that is written that way for a purpose, and that it gets better as a series goes on. But after 2 books, I don't know if I care enough to warrant reading the next 20 or so in the series. No hate if you like Dresden, he's snarky, I'm sure he's funny to some people, but for me, I was just like, why do you treat women this way when there is no need? But yeah, I don't know if it's ever going to be for me. Also, Bob's like super creepy. I found Bob to be somewhat amusing, but he's very creepy. He's a creepy skull. I don't know. If you think I should give Dresden more of a shot than 2 books, let me know in the comments down below. The audio were, like the performance from James Masters, is that his name? Was really good, really entertaining performance. But yeah, I don't know if the story is going to be for me. I own the first 4 physically, and they may be unhauled when I get to Perth. I haven't decided yet. The next one on this list is Mistborn. So I read the first Mistborn trilogy. The story itself, I really liked. The ending is still probably one of my favorite endings that I've read to date, to the point where Mistborn Era 1 may be on my top 10 series of all time. That being said, Vin and Ellen shat me to tears, and I did not care about their stories at all. Even Kelsier, I was like, I don't care. All I want is a story about Sazed and I can't remember what it was, the creature that it was. But I think the ending was fantastic. The writing is very accessible. They were way too long. So Mistborn Era 2, from people I know and trust, may end up working better for me than Mistborn Era 1, but I haven't decided to go back to it yet, and I may not continue on with the next installment of that series. The next one I have on here is Imperial Radic. I don't know how to pronounce it, by Anne Leckie. I read Ancillary Justice. I think that's the first book. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't get what all the hype was about with it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I probably gave it about a 3.5, but there's another 2 books in that series. I'm not sure whether I'm going to continue on with it. It is a maybe at this point, and it's probably more of a maybe than the rest of them on this list at this point. I then have Instant Reality by Craig Lee Gordon. This is like a cyberpunk series, and I quite enjoyed the first book. It was a little bit technical for me, and I'm wondering if I go back to it now that I've read more within the cyberpunk genre, would it work better for me? Not a bad book at all. I just don't know if it's on a priority list for me to go back and read more of the series. The next one's going to hurt some people, more so than Joe Abercrombie, and that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I've only read the first book. I've heard that you need to get to the second book and the third book to really fall in love with this series, but I was so bored by the first book that I do not know if this series is going to get better for me. I have talked to other people who have read the series. I won't name names just in case I want to do a video about it, and they said for my reading taste, it probably won't get better. So I'm very on the fence about Red Rising. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think you can persuade me to pick it up? At the moment, I'm very unsure. The next one we have is A Forgotten History. This is by Chelsea Thornton and Travis Brown. This is an episodic novella series where they go through different parts of history. I think the first one was like The Lost Vast or Lost in the Vast or something like that. Enjoyable, only 130 or so pages, but there are quite a few of them to get through, and they're just not a priority for me at this stage. I think if you like episodic storytelling, then this would be a series that you really like, particularly if you like those alternate history type of stories. So, you know, maybe it's not for me. I don't know. And the next one that is not for now, it's a pretty high maybe, is Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. Now, this Gunmetal Gods itself was such an interesting read, and like in my head, it's a dividing read for me as a person. And the reason for that is I loved the world. I loved the prose. I liked the plot and the storytelling behind it. I could not care less for one of the characters in the book. So we followed 2 POVs. I can't remember the one that I cared about, but Mikkel was the one that I didn't care about. And there was just so much of this character in the book that I don't know if I want to continue on with the series. But what I really liked was the Middle Eastern setting. I liked one side of the story, so about 50% of it. Loved it, really enjoyed it. Mikkel, Michael, whatever, I just didn't care, and I couldn't make myself care throughout the entire book. So I do not know if I will continue on with that one. Again, let me know in the comments down below if you think I should give book 2 a second chance. This is one which is like, I want to, I still don't know. So let me know. Those were the ones that I've not for now. Let's take a look at the DNFs, and there are 9 of these. The first one is going to be the Odd Thomas series by Dean Koontz. Now, this is I think it's 5-book series, don't quote me on that, which are shorter, and they follow Odd Thomas, who can see ghosts. And I quite liked the first book, but I find that Dean Koontz for me has a very certain writing style, and I need to be in the mood for it. I read the first book, I quite liked it. I read the second book, I was like, I've got no desire to read the other books in the series. So I thought it might be like the Frankenstein series, which I really enjoyed. Even though the continuations 4 and 5 weren't as good, I still thought they were good. But with Odd Thomas, I'm just not drawn to it, so I'm going to let this one go. The next one is the Lawful Time series by Daniel Green. This is Breach of Peace and Rebel's Creed, I want to say, is the second book. I picked up the first book. I did not like it at all. I thought the first 20 pages were great. Really ballsy, really dark mystery fantasy book. I understand the conversations that this author was trying to have in it, and it just fell so flat for me. And knowing that the second book is like the same story by different character POV, I was like, I don't care. So with this one, I will unfortunately be DNFing the Lawful Time series by Daniel Green. I also didn't really like the marketing around it personally, but I have since picked up A Witch's Sin Book 1 Neon Ghosts and was very impressed with that book. So I've not written off Daniel Green as an author, but Lawful Times was definitely not for me. The next one on this list is going to annoy people, and that is Murderbot by Martha Wells. I liked these novellas well enough. I just didn't love them. So I've listened to the first 3. They were fine, but I am not being called back to read them. And that takes up like 3 to 4 precious hours of audio time. I know some people love them. I can definitely see the criticisms for it. I probably had the same criticisms of the series myself. Just a little bit boring for me personally. I like the representation and what the author is trying to do with Murderbot as a character. I really appreciate that that's being done, but the series just is not for me. So I'm going to be letting that one go. The next one is probably not my hottest take, but my most ranty, I guess, review outside of Silkfire on this list, and that is Illborn, the Illborn Saga by Daniel T. Jackson. People love this book. That's great. Love that for them. I didn't think this book had a single original idea in it personally. So I don't think it's written poorly. In fact, it reads quite fast when you get into it, and it is a very quick read for such a big book. But I just think, for me, it took one of every trope that is popular and went bleh, and just like regurgitated it into the story. So I have gone back and forth on, is this a maybe, is this a DNF? And with some of the authors' reactions to certain reviews and things, it's just going to be a no for me. And if you love it, that's great. Love that for you. The next one we have is The Band by Nicholas Eames. This was Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. I don't know if there's more planned in the series. Kings of the Wild was fine for me. I just think it was the wrong side of humor for me personally. I really liked one of the side characters in there, Moog, but he was the only part of the book that I was really looking forward to. Again, this one is sort of on the very repetitive, on the cheeky slapstick humor side, and I've just learned in my own reading taste that is not something that I really enjoy in my books. I like witty humor, and I like that humor that sort of catches you off guard rather than being those cheap shots, which I found were in Kings of the Wild. Again, if you like this one, that's awesome. Love that for you, but it was just not for me. The next one is not going to shock anyone, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I read the prequel novel, or the first novel in the series, as a bit of a joke on the channel, and I vlogged my experience. This was like 350 pages, and it just took me like 2 weeks to read because I could not get into it. Sarah J. Maas is just not going to be an author for me. Next one I have here is the System Apocalypse Australia by Tao Wong and KT Hanna. So I'm interested in reading something else by Tao Wong. I've read The Nameless Restaurant, absolutely loved it. It was a little novella. This book was entertaining enough, or the first book in this series, but it was so full of stats and so heavy on the lit RPG front, and I think that I like progression fantasy more, because you don't have like pages and pages of stats being read out to you or having to skim your eyeballs over. So I don't know that I'm going back to this one. In fact, no, I do know. I know that I'm not going back to this one, but I appreciate the experience that I had listening to the first one. The next one on here is Six Shooter and a Shifter by Lucia Ashtar. I read the first book. I can't remember what it was called. I got nothing. I'll put a picture of it up there. And I was quite entertained. This is one I got off NetGalley when I went through a bit of a NetGalley phase. And it is fantasy romance. And it's just one of those things which I can see a lot of people picking up this series as a comfort read, or as just like bookish popcorn. Like, the story's not great, the characters aren't great, but it just reads so fast and it's so entertaining. So I quite enjoyed the first book. I believe it was building up to more sexy times, if that is something that you enjoy. I personally don't love a whole lot of spice if it's just written in there for spice's sake. I don't mind if there's a story behind it, but there was a lot of men without shirts, and they were all the hottest thing in the world in that book. So, you know, there was also like a Demon Winnie the Pooh aspect, which was funny to me. from what I remember. I think I read it last year, but I will not be continuing on. And the last one is a little bit sad for me. That is the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. I've read 3 out of 4 books. I loved The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I thought it was brilliant. I liked book 2, which was A Closed and Common Orbit, but I thought it repeated too much of the themes I didn't like in the first book. And by the 3rd book, Record of a Spaceborne Few, I just thought it was sort of like a hot mess. So I've now donated the 4th book. I don't think I'll be reading it, and I'm just going to keep Long Way to a Small Angry Planet as a book that I really enjoyed and sort of have it there. And the series can be read. Each of the books can be read separately, in my opinion. You don't get a whole lot of carryover. There's more carryover between book 1 and book 2 than anything to do with book 3. So I will not be continuing on with that. Those are the series that I am not finowing and DNFing. Are there any in here you think I should reconsider? Let me know in the comments down below. Can't promise it'll happen, but let me know. If you like the content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video.